to the RunnerX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running.
Welcome back to the RunnerX podcast. I'm your host, Coach Caroline, and I'm here with Coach Valerie. And what we do, guys, is basically once a week, Valerie and I go to what we call our office, which is actually a Starbucks. And we hang out and we talk about, the podcast content. And we talk about the new, the membership and stuff like that. And today we were talking about one of our members had brought up this idea of his foot when he lands, when his foot comes down to the ground, it's pointing outward. And he said, how do I keep it from landing? And my first thought was, don't think about landing, right? And it got us into a conversation about this idea of changing support and holding yourself with the correct alignment. And I mentioned a unicycle, and you said that was something that Dr. Romanoff had talked about before. Could you expound on that?
Right. It's in his first book, and the idea was really what you're doing when you're running is you're changing support, and the support is your foot, right? Where's your body weight? It's on your support. And if you're balanced on your support, on your foot, and you simply, again, so we talk about being in balance, out of balance, which I know it's not talked about a lot in running, but you're only on one foot. When you use your own body weight, so as soon as you sense body weight, you basically get off of that support foot, like hot potato. You're like, it's a game of like, how quick can I get on and off of my support? For us, it's off, right? Because on is when you touch the ground. So he talked about when someone's on a unicycle, they're balanced on their support. Their feet are right under them. Body weight's on the pedals. They have to hold their upper body in alignment, in a line. It's the same in running. That line stays connected the whole time. So they actually just, by simply shifting their body weight slightly forward, is how they start to move. It's how the unicycle starts to pedal. And then they have to keep up with their body weight in a sense. So they're balanced on their support. So it's kind of a fun way, because even if you've never been on a unicycle, you can imagine what that looks like and what that feels like.
If you've ever seen one, and if you haven't seen one, I encourage you to go to Google or YouTube and say unicycle, and you can watch. Tons of videos out there. But that's really a great visual reference for what we mean by alignment, and what we mean by having the feet under you.
Right, and also I think the challenge for most of us in running is, one, just like you said, we really get caught up on everything we do wrong instead of focusing on what we all do correctly or what we all actually are doing right. So I always say to people, let's work on what you're already doing really well and just make that better. Yeah. Because just like you're saying, this guy's saying, my foot turns out when I hit the ground. When it lands, it's turned out to the side. And I'm sure if you went to the running store, they'd be like, oh my gosh, you pronate, you need to get these shoes. And then he goes to his PT, and his PT is like, oh, your hip's a mess, and that's why your foot. So then all of a sudden you're giving someone these thoughts of like, that it's something to do with that. Something's wrong with me. My foot turns out when I run. And it's like, no, nothing's wrong with you. Now, that doesn't mean, guys, just so you know, every one of us has like something, right? If you go to the PT or chiro. So we all need to work on our strength and our balance. But my point is, and what I showed him even, is that when he's in the correct alignment, when he's in pose, and when he simply does nothing but pull his foot up from the ground, his foot actually lands exactly where it needs to, because gravity takes care of that. And the challenge is, one, I have to believe that, and I have to kind of be okay with that. Letting go of the foot touching the ground is so hard for most of us. Everybody's like, people love to say to me, I'm a heel striker, I'm a toe striker, I'm a this. I'm thinking, how do you even know?
Or I love how they ask you, well, where should my foot land?
Where should I land on my foot? Right. And I'm like, the word is up. Like if you're thinking up, 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 when you run, you let go of all those thoughts. And
Yeah.
in no other movement do we wonder that. Like I tell people, do a jumping jack. If I just say do a jumping jack, no one has ever once asked me, where should I land on my foot? Never once.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just do the
That's
jumping
true.
jack. And I'm like, you see, you already know where you're supposed to be. It's just you've never thought about it this way. And then once you start to connect with that, it's such a fun little way to start working on your movement and your connection. And he still needs to do hip exercises, guys. I mean, I recognize that if his foot really is turning out, sure, we need to do hip exercises, foot strength exercises, which we, of course, give you in the program. And that, all of that together and working on the correct movement, both in running and walking, he'll find that that's not going to happen because he's going to let go of that intent of putting his foot down.
Right. Okay, well, thank you guys for joining us today. We're going to make this a short one. I just really would love it if you guys would go out and look up a unicycle and watch it a little bit, because even just picturing that in my head helps me to understand better like what I'm actually trying to do when I'm holding my body in line. And that idea that if I do lean forward or move my head, in front of my body, if I was on a unicycle, I'd face plant. Right. So we really need to be aware of that. And if you have questions for us on the podcast, reach out to support@runrx.fit. That's support@runrx.fit. And we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRx podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.